We are pre-recorded, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been a while, and one of the things I'm going to go over today is probably not what you think. It's not about Bitcoin, it's about the traditional markets, and I have long said I thought that the S&P 500 would probably continue to rise, and lo and behold, we have a beautiful run-up now into the 309 points, or around 3090 for those of you who are on the traditional markets. But on the S&P 500, the momentum upwards, as I have for the last 3 years thought would continue, is basically, in my opinion, coming from the degradation of the dollar itself. When you understand that business is the only real driving force of value on this planet, what good is money? It's a question I have long asked myself. Peer-to-peer money is great when you can make peer-to-peer transactions, but why do people make transactions? It's because they need a product or a service. And this is what business fundamentally implies it does for one and the other. It brings value to the community through the goods and services that it provides. That's why you need money, is to be able to acquire these goods and services, whether it's property, gold, silver, maybe you need a new set of towels. It's unimportant what particular products and services you need. So the current rise in the S&P 500, in my opinion, will continue, as I do not believe the average person for the next few years is going to figure out that the dollar is actually degrading at a very, very rapid rate. One of the things that I think is important here to understand is in the crypto space markets, a lot of us are interested in the death of the dollar. And that's an important feature because Bitcoin is not a hedge against the collapse of the stock market. It's a hedge against the collapse of the hegemony inside of the US dollar. And what that means in short is the essential function of currency itself is to drive velocity into economy so that we can take advantage of the goods and services again that we want from the profitable and equitable areas of business that we all like and love so much. Whether it's your iPhone, your computer, a new t-shirt, buy an Arcane Bear t-shirt, sign up for a private newsletter, unimportant. But the point here is, I've also thought that the only way this would ever collapse is when inflation starts to hit the average everyday person and they can no longer afford food and housing. And that has been happening more and more frequently. The student debt, all these bonds and derivatives in the background have just been exploding. But the average person has no real exposure to those things, let alone understand the rather innate complexities that exist inside this ecosystem. So if they don't know, when does that break? And that's always been the question I've had, is when will it break? That's what we all ask ourselves, is when is this system going to break? And with the S&P 500 currently sitting at new highs and continuing to drive higher, I'm starting to lean more and more into this idea that we may not see a traditional collapse as we might thought, until the average person will not stand for their inability to buy goods and services any longer. If the prices of these companies keep rising and the value of the dollar keeps falling, not that it is at the current moment, but I'm assuming that this money printing scheme will come to an end at some point, but its terminal velocity or escape velocity, I forget which one it is, in the physics world itself might be a lot higher than we had ever anticipated. And because of that, Bitcoin is still an asset that sits inside of the general mindset of the, intelligent investor. I fairly firmly believe that Bitcoin is going to run up quite high over the next few months into May 2020. I believe this time, though, instead of the price going up after the halving, I think it's going to come down. Generally, when we know this far in advance and we think that something like that's going to happen in the markets, it's the opposite that comes to light and fruition. So I know that generally, well, first off, I want to apologize for not producing more videos. It's been a little while. I've been in Singapore. I'm building a new company. I've been working fairly diligently on the things I love, providing as much value as humanly possible to the disenfranchised, the peripheralized, and the people that are pushed down at the bottom, because that's who needs it as we grow. And those are the people, in my opinion, that got me out and off of the side of the jungle, because when I was feeling great doing all my own things, I could feel the irks and pains of our world, because we are all one. It's a hard, maybe philosophical, spiritual concept to integrate into one's life unless you have a lot of practice in that sector. But that's what I've been feeling, and that's why I started building. That's why I started working in these spaces, is to communicate to you guys as much value as possible. So I do apologize that I wasn't here. But with this current revelation, we might have another few years ahead of us. This might go a lot further than any of us thought. I remember taking out way out of the money options on the stock market in 2016, thinking, oh, this is done. We're done here. It's not going any further. But it didn't end there. No, they just kept printing money. They just kept running this system. And the average person can still afford to play the game. In fact, that trickle-down effect is making a difference. We see people just giving away money, right? And more and more so, the blockchain is going to help answer some of these problems in the world of, let's call it, sustainable universal income, where you're getting provided the value for the data that you preserve from Facebook, Instagram, all these companies that are basically selling you and your content to others. I don't think that will continue. I believe the average person will get upset about that, and then you'll be able to be monetizing the work and the things that you share on the internet at large. You might even be able to get paid for almost all the traffic searching you do. You see things like Brave browser providing this type of idea, really proving the point. But again, the underlying sentiment here is what breaks the camel's back. And that straw, in my mind, is the moment that the average person in the United States of America can no longer afford the goods and services that they run on their everyday life from. And this has been noticeable. Houses aren't more expensive, they just appear more expensive because the dollar has lost so much value. Since the 1960s alone, if you compare it to a silver ounce of gold, which is what $1 used to be, you're looking at approximately $16, which is around 1,600%. Or 16 times inflation. These are massive numbers that have been hidden totally from the average mind of the average person because they're not that focused, studied, or invested in understanding these problems. So today, seeing the S&P 500 at all new highs gives me somewhat of a nice feeling, because it means, well, first off, we were justified in our assertions just over the last 2 years. It's nice to be right, although I don't expect that I'm right. It's just by happenstance. Quite often we could say I got lucky. Again, I believe the real crux of the problem here is how much further can this go? And since 2016, when I thought we were done, it's not going any further, they can't print any more money, they proved me wrong. And I've been proved wrong year after year since then, only until I changed my assertion, which is that these markets will continue to rise until the average person can no longer afford the basic life that they live. And that, my dear friends, is when people will stand up and they will not allow what is going on to happen anymore. Whether they understand it or not, they will fight for their right to survive. And that's basically what we're looking at. It's not going to be pleasant. We see the downfalls and the pitfalls. Places like Chile, Venezuela, Turkey, Africa, Argentina, they've been exploding. And the reason they've been exploding is because those people can no longer afford to survive. And that is the crux of what I think will break the camel's back. That is the final straw. But until then, maybe even many years down the road, these markets are going to continue to go up, in my opinion. How much higher? I'm not sure. How much longer? I could not say. Ask the average person how they're feeling. Ask them if they can afford the food to survive, or the rent, and to keep the shelter over their head. This is Tio with the Arcane Bear, reminding you all to be very grateful for everything that you have, even your problems, because one day we won't have those too. And every step further that I've made it, I've realized that these obstacles are opportunities to make ourselves stronger and more compassionate for what we believe in. This is Tio for the Arcane Bear. I will be signing off for the rest of the day. Remember to give us those thumbs up, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I know I've been away for a little while. I apologize. I will be back more consistently here in Singapore. I've been hanging out with Lark, Data Dash. You guys are fantastic. I have found new friends and family in this community, and I am very deeply grateful for the world of blockchain and Bitcoin. So if you happen to be around the Singapore conferences today, make sure you drop in, you say hello to old Mr. T-Ho Bear. I think I'll be wearing my bright and beautiful T-Ho Bear t-shirt today. And I'm signing off, and we'll see you guys on the other side.